So as we've seen, methods are basically functions which help us shorten up operations on things like arrays or really anything we want in JavaScript. But when we're talking about web-based games, DOM methods are essential to helping us understand how JavaScript and HTML interact. They're basically functions that tell JavaScript how to interact with the HTML and HTML how to interact with JavaScript. These DOM methods for JavaScript come in kind of three big flavors. And we're going to look at two of the biggest ones right now, which are the get element by ID that you see right here, and then the inner HTML. Both of these are very widely used within JavaScript. The the get element by ID identifies a place in the HTML with an ID attribute to go in that you tell that, hey, JavaScript, interact with this part of the HTML. So in this one, I'm creating a variable and calling it user1, and I'm saying go to the end of the program. Well, if you want to get a value for user1, go to the document, which is the HTML, get an element by its ID, and hey, look for the ID that says username input1. So JavaScript goes to the HTML and they keep looking. Oh, and there's an ID, right? Because we're getting the element by ID, and there's username input1. Oh, username input1, cool. So I'm going to take whatever is in that box, which I've written my name here because we're just putting in a couple of boxes for our usernames. My name's Craig, and so that's going to be my username. The other username's Michael. And in fact, that's what we're doing here for user2. We're saying, all right, now if you want to get a program, if you want to get a value for user2, go to the document, the HTML document, get an element by its ID, and find the ID username input2. So whatever is written in this second input, username input2, you're going to get from its ID its value to be stored in this variable. So you can see that this get element by ID makes things much more interactive with actual HTML on a page. We have one other thing here, this inner HTML. We've actually put it inside a function. And so when this function activates, what's actually going to happen is this inner HTML, so it's going to say, hey, when I activate this function program, go to the document again, find an ID that says print user1, and we've put that into a paragraph here with an ID called print user1. And inner HTML, I like to think of it as like enter into the HTML, aka like put something into the HTML, put it in there what I tell you. Well, put what in there? Well, it's equal to user1. We already said that user1 was whatever I put in this box up here, right? We'll put the value of whatever the variable user1 is, put it into this paragraph right here. And same thing for the other one. Go to the document, get an element by ID. This find the print user2 ID on any tag you can find. Enter into the HTML user2, the value of user2, which we said was already the input box number 2, and input its value in there. So when I hit submit, which we're going to talk a little bit about these on-click submissions here in a second. This is another DOM event. It basically activates this function and says, all right, print both of these things to the page. And so if I reload this here, in fact, it'll actually do it again. So I can put two other names in here. Let's put Bob and Jane in here. And so when I hit submit, it's going to activate this function right here that finds these two IDs, print user1 and print user2, and there they are right here in these two paragraphs, which right now are empty. You see they're empty? So they're empty right now. And it says put in the value of user1, which is Bob, and put the input of user2, which is Jane. So once I activate this function, there you go. Bob and Jane come up onto the screen. And so there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with these DOM methods here. Again, the get element by ID and the inner HTML are the most common ones. But also something that's really common are not only these methods, where you're just putting these dots here and telling the program basically to perform these little functions, but are actually connecting the HTML through functions called or through events called these on-click events. There's also other events called on-change. There's events called on-submit. There's a lot of different events. If you scroll below in this lesson, you can see all of the different types of events that there are. There's a couple dozen of events that you can use. The most common ones are the on-click and the on-change, because it just basically means when you click on this, make a function happen. So these DOM events, what they're basically doing is saying, hey, when I want you to listen for something that happens on this page here. So more specifically, hey, you input box here. I'm going to make you the type submit. So it's basically a submit button. It's an input, but it's a submit button. Hey, when I click on it, I want you to activate in the JavaScript the following function, the print to page function. So that means that when I click on submit right there, it's going to activate the function that says print to page. So you can see right here, here's the function print to page, and it's telling me, and I'm telling the program that when you hear or when you listen for a click on the page, particularly on this input button, you're going to find, I want you to activate this. Let's see another one that's, this is just a basic on-click. So again, if I do another one, this is Craig and Michael. Click submit there and it comes to the page. Hold up. Right, so there's Craig and Michael. Click submit and it comes to the page again. It's kind of glitchy right now because it keeps reloading. Craig and Michael. If I click submit, there you go, Craig and Michael come up onto the page, right? But let's try another one here. In fact, let's make our favorite, let's make a program whereby we're going to delete all of this right here. But let's make a program where people are going to be able to choose their own weapons, right, from a drop-down box, their favorite weapons. And then what we'll do is we'll randomly assign a weapon from the favorite ones that they suggested. We'll randomly assign them a weapon so that they can play with that weapon, we'll say. If we're playing like Halo or, oh, I don't know. You can even do this with items, for example. So let's say we're playing some, classical game here, and the weapons are earth, wind, water, and fire. So what I'm going to be doing here, and what I'm doing right now is making sure that there are all commas around here. What I've done is copied and pasted everything from a Word document, and so a lot of the commas or the quotation marks that go around these options here are actually a little messed up, and you got to really watch out for that when you're copying and pasting from a Word document. And so what's going on here, so that you can just kind of see some of this basic outline, and I'll continue doing this, is that we're making an HTML where you actually are making a bunch of drop-down boxes. The way that you make drop-down boxes in HTML is getting this select tag, and then embedded within those select tag are these options, right? So what I'm doing here is I basically have, let me make sure I get this H2 here down correctly. It doesn't seem like it's in there correctly. Click here to get a random item. Oh, we forgot a little tag right here. There we go. So what you see here is a basic drop-down tag. So you can pick your first favorite weapon, pick your second favorite weapon, and so on and so forth. And so what we're going to do is make a bunch of options for people to pick. So we've said that the first weapon is going to be earth, the second one is going to be wind, the second one is going to be water, and the second one is going to be fire. So these are the 4 weapons that you can choose from. And what I've done here is that they've made 3 different drop-down boxes. And so what that means is that I have like 3 different sections and 3 different possible functions that I'm going to need to make, so that when someone selects a drop-down, aka when they change the value on the drop-down, that we can basically store all of these items into, we can store all of the values that they've selected into variables, and then those variables into arrays. And what we're going to do with that array, like we've done in the past, is create a randomized box, a random function that picks out a random value from from that array. And so what you can see right here is that I have all of my selections already here. And so with these options, I can just copy and paste a lot of these options down here so that it's really easy to see. And then I can replace earth, wind, water, and fire. It's earth, wind, water, fire. Let's try this again here. Earth, wind, water, fire. I think I messed something up here. So let's do this. Options, earth, wind, water. Take your second favorite. Notice what I'm doing here is just rewriting all these options, and I change it to second here. And then these options, I'll pick your third. So I have now 3 drop-down boxes with earth, wind, water, and fire, earth, wind, water, and fire. So that every time somebody clicks on this, on one of these boxes, that what basically happens is that from these select items, we make sure that they can choose and a value is returned for that particular box. And so if you look at this a little closer, each select item has an ID. So this one is option 1. And each select item also has a function that they're going to need to access. For this one, it's option 1, or option 1 input is the function that I'm going to activate. For this second one here, for this second select, the ID is option 2. And the function that I want to activate is option 2 input. For this next one, the on change is going to be option 3 input, and the ID is option 3. And I'm getting a final input here, and I'm going to make it also a submit button so that this button, this on click, is actually going to activate the function that prints the random value from the array from one of their 3 weapons to the page. And it just basically says your random item is, and then here's the ID for the print random item that's going to show up right down here. So you can see that this this paragraph goes right there. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go and we're going to write the JavaScript. So the first thing that we're going to do in writing this JavaScript is I know I'm going to need an array. So I'm just going to go ahead and make an array right here, but I'm going to make it an empty array for right now, because what I'm going to do is have each one of these functions push a new item into the array. So I know that I have one function that I need to start out with, which is the option 1 input. So what am I going to do with the option 1 input? I'm going to write it right down here. I'm going to make it work. So I'm going to make a function called option 1 input because that's the function I want to activate. Now what do I actually want to do? The first thing I want to do is create a variable called item1, meaning that's the first item that my user chose. And I'm going to say, well, where am I going to get the value for this? And that's where we get to use the get element by ID. We say, hey, go to the document, get an element by ID, find the ID that says option 1. Okay, well, we have option 1 up here in our first selection box. Find the value of it. Now you notice here that depending on which one I choose, which box I choose, which of the drop-down boxes, it returns a value for me. So earth returns earth, wind returns wind, water returns water, fire returns fire. Cool beans, it's easy enough, right? And so once I have the value from item 1, it's basically whatever the user ends up picking. What it's going to do is going to say, what I'm going to do is going to say, hey, program, find the items array, push item 1 into that array. So I'm going to, as I change this box right here, I'm going to say, I want earth. That's my favorite. So it's going to store item 1 in earth. It already activated this function because it's the option 1 input. So whenever I change it, it's going to activate this option 1 input. So it says, create a new variable, go to the document, get option 1. I already changed it to earth. What's the value of it? It's earth. Now Now find the item arrays and push that item, earth, into that array. Cool, easy enough, right? All right, let's try the next one here. I'm going to save this and reload. Okay, let's do the next one here. Basically the same thing. So instead of the option 1, I'm going to do option 2, like this one right here, right? So we got option 1, we got option 2, all looking peachy keen, right? So the option 2, I'm going to call it item 2. That is the variable that I want to create. I want the program to go to the document, find the ID that says option 2, got it right there, and get its value, which I can select, right? And it'll return one of the values, either earth, wind, water, or fire. Now find the arrays. Now find the items array, and I want you to push the value of item 2 into that array. And then you can do the exact same thing with this option 3 input. Looks the exact same thing, except like we're using option 3, item 3, option 3 again, and item 3 again. Cool enough. Now that we have a way for all of these user inputs to get into this array, the next thing that we want to do is create a random prototype here, and we've seen this random prototype a ton of times. It just says random item generator, so it basically takes any array and returns for that array a random index number. We've already talked about this and whatnot, but it returns a random item number for us. So we already got that. Now the last thing I need, and the last function that I'm noticing here, is the submit items function. And so what do I want the submit items function to do? Well, basically what I wanted to do is take this random item that I know that I can generate, and I want to print it to the page so that they can say, your random item is this. So here I got that. So I'm going to declare a function. We're going to call it submit items. Make sure I do my little parentheses here. Then I got my function brackets right here. I'm going to say, all right, go into the document. I want you to get the element by ID print random item. So here's print random item. So that's where we're going to print the thing. We're going to print the random item. And in order to tell the program to print it, you have to say enter HTML. So what am I going to enter into the HTML? Well, I'm going to go to the items array, which remember, by actually changing each one of these right here, I'm actually putting new items into this array through the 3 functions that we've already made. And I'm going to say from those items, I want to get a random item, because remember, we've already made this random item gen function. And then we have the parentheses here, so that it says that activate this function. And this should give us everything that we need in order for, when I click the submit button, after selecting my 3 favorite weapons, a random item should appear down here. So let me go ahead and test this out. So there's earth, wind, and water. Let's say earth, wind, and water are my favorite, and I click submit, and there it goes. It's wind. And actually, I can keep clicking submit, and this function will continue to activate, and that means it'll get me a different random one every time. So it'll give me either earth, wind, or water randomly. Earth, water, wind, 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 earth. There you go. So you can just keep clicking on it. It'll give you a random one each time. So this is how you can make some really complicated code, in fact, very, very easy, by using these DOM methods. Mainly, you're using getElementById, you're using value, you're using also inner HTML. So just 3 DOM methods do all of this stuff for you, combining all of the knowledge about randomness and arrays that you guys have used over this entire lesson, and making really cool basic programs to be able to do sign-in pages, to register people's usernames, to have people choose weapons, and then print those things out on the page. Good luck with all your challenges.